Hello everyone, welcome to It's Complicated. My name is Carlos, and today I'm going to be showing you this Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT with a Dragonfly Blue dial that is just bananas. So this is the Christopher Ward C63 Sealander GMT. This is kind of a more restrained design compared to what Christopher Ward has been doing lately. It is very reminiscent of the Rolex Explorer GMT. And with a screw-down crown and awesome water resistance, I think this is the type of watch that will be great for adventuring, but also look really in place at the office or at your business casual affair. Before we go any further into this video, I want to point out that this particular watch is a review unit that was lent to me by the good folks over at Christopher Ward. But at the end of the review, I do have to send this watch back, so I do not get to keep it. Christopher Ward has absolutely no say in what I get to discuss with you guys in this review, and everything that you will hear in this review are my opinions and my opinions alone. Christopher Ward is an independent brand that really caught the watch market by storm a couple of years ago with two big releases, one being the Bel Canto, one of the most affordable watches, if not the only watch with an auditory complication that is, really well priced compared to the more expensive offerings. And they also brought to the market the 12, which is very nice, sub $2,000 and in some cases sub $1,000 Genta design integrated bracelet. And that's actually the last watch I reviewed, so I'll put the review somewhere up here. Since their big splash with the Bel Canto and the 12, Christopher Ward has really been putting a lot of energy into their catalog through updating their logo, bringing new dials, and also generating new bracelets to really sort of be the standout Swiss brand at that entry-level luxury watch point. So if you're new to my reviews, usually I like to start by looking at the fit and finish of a particular watch. Now, Christopher Ward is a brand that honestly always does really good in their fit and finishes. Most of the watches that I've handled for them usually have a combination of both brushing and polishing that looks really nice. The Sealander 63 is no different. The case is very reminiscent of maybe like the Tudor/Ranger kind of GMT line of design, and also that Rolex Explorer GMT watch. However, the big difference with those watches and this watch is that Christopher Ward chose to put a fixed bezel on the Sealander. So I think for many of you watching this video, if you like Rolex, if you like Tudor, you're gonna find the case very pleasing. With that said, I think that there are some details that Christopher Ward puts into the watches that I think really make this particular case stand out. So one is the really nice beveling that they put in all the edges of the case that really breaks up the brushing of the side with the brushing of the top and of the lugs. And on top of that, they do this really nice undercut to kind of generate this optical illusion where the watches look a little bit thinner than they actually are. It's a little detail that I really like. The other thing that I think is really nice is that there is a nice sort of separation between the bezel and the case that adds an extra thickness to those lines that really makes it stand out, breaks up the shape, and really adds a lot of visual interest to the union of the bezel and the case. The bezel itself is polished on the sides and has a really nice sort of satinized finish with very well and cleanly engraved 24-hour markings to be used with the GMT hand. So after looking at the case, we basically get into the dial. This Dragonfly Blue dial is really sort of like the standout part of the particular watch, and I think that most of the people that are drawn to this particular watch are going to be drawn because of this beautiful blue dial that has this almost sun ray effect, but it is actually a lot smoother. It doesn't have any sort of visible brushing, but it does have that kind of light play that you usually see in the sunburst dials. The dial is then enhanced with very well done overlaid markers with plenty of lume and a little train track towards the outside of the markers to serve as minute markers. One of the things that I really like about this watch and the dial combination is the way they've kind of incorporated the hands. I feel like the GMT hand and the second hand both have those little hits of orange that are just classical with that type of orange teal kind of color palette, and the teal sort of being that Dragonfly Blue. but it's just like a really classic combination, that orange and teal, you know, very cinematic, very beautiful, just by artists all over the place. And it's just known as a color combination that is just one of the most effective passive color combinations that artists can use. So I feel like they did a really good job by sort of sticking to that tried and tested color palette, and it's something that just really complements that blue really nicely and just adds a little bit of fun to the dial. As far as the hour hand and the minute hand, you know, this is a place where Christopher Ward always does a great job. They're one of the few brands that always tries to include dual finished hands on their watches, and this one's no different. You will see that the hands, both of them, have a combination of both brushing and polishing. Right underneath the 12 o'clock marker, we'll see the beautifully overlaid and updated Christopher Ward logo, which is also made out of steel, also overlaid and also brushed, and just continues to add like really nice dimensionality and light play to just what is everything that makes up this dial. Right at the 6 o'clock, you will see a really nicely integrated date with a matching color wheel, which honestly is very surprising because since this is such a specifically colored watch, it's kind of crazy to see a date wheel that actually matches perfectly the dial. So that's another part that I think that Christopher Ward has done incredibly well. This watch, like most Christopher Ward watches, has a display case back with an awesome sapphire crystal, allowing us to pretty much check out the movement on demand. The movement does happen to be an Elabore grade Selita movement. And one of the nice things about the Elabore grade is that they're not the most highly decorated, but they definitely have like a little bit of extra brushing and kind of satination that makes the overall set of bridges stand out from your vanilla SW movements. Of course, this watch is a 4 Hz movement, which means that it beats at 8 beats per second. And unlike a regular SW200, it actually features a GMT hand that can be adjusted to track a second time zone. This GMT, for those who are wondering, is office/color GMT. So when operating the watch, you'll basically pull the crown all the way out to set your local time using the hour hand and the minute hand, and then you can go to that middle crown position to jump the 24-hour hand to track a second time zone. One of the downsides of this type of GMT movement is that the 24-hour hand can only move in one direction, as operating the crown in the opposite direction is what allows us to use the quick set feature of the day. All right, so let's talk about the bracelet. The bracelet is definitely a highlight of this watch. It is incredibly nicely finished with brushing and satination. It has this really beautifully polished middle links. The end links of the bracelet are perfectly matched to the style of the bracelet. And of course, we get those screws to be able to easily adjust the bracelet to fit any size. We have the really nice Christopher Ward branding on the clasp itself. And one of the things that's great about this particular bracelet is that it's very similar to like an engineer bracelet in the sense that all of the links are kind of independent from each other, which gives it just like an amazing flow, makes it super comfortable to wear, and you know, make sure that if you have a hairy wrist like mine, that you're not gonna be pulling all of your hairs. So overall, a really great bracelet. Obviously, the only complaint is that it does sport a butterfly clasp, which means that while looking very clean and elegant, you are going to be lacking micro adjustment options, which means that you might not be able to find that perfect fit. All right, so let's get into the nerdy part of the review, which is the accuracy part. I test these watches across 6 positions on the time grapher, and while the time grapher is not the full story of how well a watch is going to run, it does at least give us an idea of like the average quality of the movement and how accurate the movement is across multiple positions. So I have to say that the Selita movement in this watch was actually incredibly accurate. The delta was a little bit high. We had a delta of about 10 seconds. So that means that the slowest position was -5 and the highest position was +5. Literally a 10-second difference between the slowest and the fastest position. With that said, most of the other positions were super good, all being under 2-second differences, which meant that the average seconds per day that this particular movement would be losing was actually under a second. My calculations were like 0.8 seconds or something like that. So I expect that this watch is going to be super accurate on the wrist, and people are going to be incredibly pleased with the accuracy. This is not a COSC certified movement, but it runs phenomenally well. I think the difference between this and COSC certified, other than the fact that COSC is tested through much grueling situations, is that delta between the slowest and fastest position would actually be much slower. But to be honest, this particular guy runs so great that I don't think it matters. It might have that higher delta, but as I said, all the other positions were so incredibly close to each other that when everything averages out, I will really be surprised if you're losing or gaining more than a second or two a day. I'm very satisfied with the accuracy of this particular review unit that they sent me. All right, so now that we're done with the nerdy part of the review, we're gonna talk about kind of like the difficult part of the review. And the difficult part of the review is usually tucking money. So the MSRP for this particular watch is $1,200. Now, I personally think that this watch would do a little bit better if it was a little bit under $1,000. And the reason why I feel that way is because there's been a lot of changes in the watch market that have made office/color GMTs not as good of a bargain as they used to be. You have to understand that 2 years ago, if you wanted a travel GMT, you had to pay like $3,000 for them. So watches with this type of movement, that is this sort of simpler office GMT, they could basically be underneath $3,000 and still provide good value because there really weren't other options below that $3,000 price mark. However, in the last couple of years, one of the big changes is that both ETA, Seiko, and Miyota have introduced really affordable true travel GMTs, and all of those are under $1,000, which honestly makes it really hard for people that care about these differences to justify the $1,200 price mark. Taking all of that into consideration, I think the thing to keep in mind though is that the true GMT watches under that $1,000 mark tend to be a little bit bigger and a little bit thicker. So if anything, the one thing that you can use to justify the price of the Christopher Ward GMT is that you are getting a 39mm watch and you're getting something that is relatively thin that is just gonna look a little bit smaller and a little bit more elegant if that's the thing that you're into. However, if you actually like watches that are over 40mm, those other brands that I mentioned sort of offer that better movement and that better value for your money. All right, so with all of that said, let's wrap this up with likes and dislikes. So obviously my likes are, I really love the color of the dial. The color of the dial and the hits of orange just work really well together. As I said, I think that people that are looking to buy this particular watch, I feel are people that are really gonna be drawn in by the aesthetics of this watch. I do think that Christopher Ward played it a little bit safe with the case design and the overall sort of Tudor/Rolex reminiscent kind of design. However, with that said, those designs work. They're simple and they're, you know, kind of expected, but at the same time, they're elegant and they're very much in Swiss tradition. So I think that it's kind of a nice combination to have a watch that for the most part is very classical, if somewhat reserved, but at the same time brings that pop of color to the dial to sort of make it a little bit younger and a little bit more fun. So those are things that I really like about the watch. One last thing that I really like about the watch is actually the back of the watch is fluted right around the case back, which I think is like a little detail that you won't see all the time, but I think it's a detail that's really cool. And it also has like a little bit of satination in that fluting that just adds an extra detail in the finishing that is just really cool, to be honest. So as far as dislikes, I think the only thing that I could really say that I dislike about this watch is that I wish that they could somehow add half links to this bracelet. I don't know how hard that would be to do, but I think that since these clasps have absolutely no micro adjustment, including a couple of half links as part of the bracelet, could potentially give people a few more options to try to get that perfect fit. So that's pretty much it for the C63 Sealander with the Dragonfly Blue dial. Tell me what you guys think about this watch. What do you guys think about the price? And I'm curious to sort of hear from you guys. What do you guys think about the state of office color GMTs? Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the travel GMT or do you prefer the office GMT? Leave me a note on the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please take the time to like and subscribe. It really goes a long way. I have such little subscribers that I'm not really able to monetize the channel. So to be honest, if I hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, I get to monetize this content, and it will make a difference for me, right? So please take the time to do so, and thank you very much for your time. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate you hanging out with me, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Until then, see you later.